Most people believe that if their life were truly falling apart, they would notice it. They imagine failure as something loud, a sudden collapse, a dramatic moment where everything goes wrong at once. But that is not how life usually breaks down. Life is rarely ruined by one big mistake. It is slowly shaped by small, invisible habits that feel harmless in the moment. Habits so quiet that you barely notice them happening. Habits that don't hurt today, but cost you years tomorrow. Asterisk, the most dangerous habits are not the ones that shock you. They are the ones that comfort you. They blend into your routine. They become part of who you think you are. And because they don't cause immediate pain, your mind never flags them as a problem. Yet over time, these habits quietly drain your focus, your confidence, your discipline, and eventually your belief in yourself. Asterisk, this audiobook is not about blaming you. It is not about shaming you. It is about awareness. Because the moment you can see these habits clearly, they lose their power over you. And the moment you interrupt even one of them, your life begins to change in ways that feel almost unfairly powerful. Asterisk, let's begin with one of the most invisible habits of all. Asterisk, the habit of postponing your life. Asterisk, this habit rarely announces itself. It shows up as "I'll do it later." Later when I have more time. Later when I feel ready. Later when things calm down. Later when motivation returns. But later is not a real place. Later is a story the mind tells itself to avoid discomfort in the present moment. Asterisk, every time you postpone something important, your brain learns a lesson. It learns that discomfort is something to escape from, not something to move through. And slowly, without realizing it, you train yourself to wait instead of act. Over time, waiting becomes your default response. Not because you're incapable, but because your nervous system has been conditioned to choose comfort over progress. Asterisk, the danger is not that you delay once or twice. The danger is that delaying becomes your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who plans but doesn't execute, someone who thinks deeply but moves slowly, someone who has potential but never quite uses it. And the longer this habit continues, the heavier it becomes to break. Because now you're not just fighting resistance. You're fighting the story you've told yourself about who you are. Asterisk, another invisible habit that quietly ruins lives is constant mental noise. Asterisk, your mind is rarely silent. Even when you are physically resting, mentally you are scrolling, replaying, worrying, comparing, planning, regretting. This constant background noise feels normal because it's always been there. But it comes at a cost you don't immediately notice. Asterisk, mental noise steals your ability to focus deeply. It fragments your attention into small, scattered pieces. You start many things but finish very few. You consume information endlessly but struggle to apply what you learn. You feel busy all the time, yet strangely unproductive. Asterisk, over time, this habit trains your brain to avoid depth. Silence begins to feel uncomfortable. Stillness feels boring. And because real growth requires quiet focus, you unconsciously avoid the very mental state that would allow you to change. Asterisk, the tragedy is that many people think they are tired because they work too hard. In reality, they are tired because their mind never rests. They are exhausted not from effort, but from constant stimulation. And until that noise is reduced, clarity remains out of reach. Asterisk, another habit that quietly erodes your life is overconsumption without creation. Asterisk, you read books, you watch videos, you listen to podcasts, you save posts, you gather ideas, and all of it feels productive. But consumption without creation slowly creates a false sense of progress. Your brain receives dopamine for learning something new, even if you never apply it. So it starts to mistake knowledge for action. Asterisk, over time, you become someone who knows a lot but does very little. Someone who understands concepts deeply but hasn't changed behavior. And the gap between who you are and who you know you could be begins to grow. That gap creates frustration, self-doubt, and eventually numbness. Asterisk, the habit itself isn't learning. Learning is powerful. The problem is learning without implementation. Because information alone doesn't change lives. Action does. And if you're not careful, consumption becomes a way to avoid the discomfort of doing. Asterisk, then there's the habit of reacting instead of responding. Asterisk, life constantly presents stimuli, messages, criticism, delays, disappointments, and many people live in a state of automatic reaction. Something happens, an emotion takes over. Anger, defensiveness, anxiety, impulse. Asterisk, this habit slowly gives your power away. Because every time you react without awareness, you allow external events to control your internal state. You become predictable, easy to trigger, easy to manipulate. Asterisk, responding, on the other hand, requires space. A pause, a moment of silence between stimulus and action. That pause is where power lives. But building that pause takes practice. And without practice, reaction becomes your default. Asterisk, over years. This habit shapes your relationships, your decisions, and your self-respect. You may not notice it happening day to day, but eventually you look back and wonder why life feels chaotic, why conversations escalate, why peace feels fragile. Often, the answer is not the world around you. It is the habit of reacting too quickly. Asterisk, another invisible habit is negotiating with yourself. Asterisk, this habit sounds harmless. Just 5 more minutes. I'll start tomorrow. One day off won't matter. But every time you negotiate with yourself and break your own word, something subtle happens. Trust erodes. Not trust in others, but trust in yourself. Asterisk, self-trust is built when your actions align with your intentions. When you say you'll do something and you do it. When you don't, your mind learns that your promises are flexible, optional, not serious. Asterisk, over time, motivation becomes unreliable because motivation relies on belief, and belief relies on consistency. When self-trust is low, discipline feels impossible. You start depending on mood instead of commitment, and mood is unstable by nature. Asterisk, this habit doesn't ruin your life overnight. It ruins it quietly by making you someone who doubts their own. Follow through. Asterisk, another deeply destructive habit is avoiding. Boredom. Asterisk, modern life gives us endless ways to escape. Boredom, phones, music, notifications, entertainment on demand. But boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is a gateway. It is the space where reflection happens, where creativity emerges, where uncomfortable truths surface. Asterisk, when you constantly escape boredom, you also escape yourself. You avoid the moments where your mind might ask difficult questions. You avoid the silence where change begins. Asterisk, over time, your tolerance for stillness decreases. You need stimulation to feel okay. And without stimulation, you feel restless, anxious, empty. This is not because something is wrong with you. It is because your nervous system has forgotten how to be still. Asterisk, another invisible habit is comparing your behind the scenes to other people's highlights. Asterisk, you scroll and see success, happiness, confidence, progress. Rarely do you see doubt, confusion, failure, or fear. Yet your mind compares your full reality to their curated moments. And slowly, quietly, self-worth erodes. Asterisk, comparison distorts perception. It makes progress feel slow, effort feel pointless, and uniqueness feel inadequate. Over time, it pushes people to either give up or chase goals that aren't truly theirs. Asterisk, this habit is dangerous not because comparison exists, but because it becomes unconscious. You don't even realize it's influencing your mood, your decisions, your self-image. Yet it does every single day. Asterisk, another habit that ruins lives quietly is avoiding responsibility for internal states. Asterisk, blaming circumstances, blaming people, blaming timing. While some things are genuinely outside your control, your response to them is not. When you avoid responsibility for how you think, feel, and act, you surrender agency. Asterisk, agency is the belief that your choices matter. Without it, life feels like something that happens to you, not something you participate in. And that belief shapes everything from ambition to resilience. Asterisk, taking responsibility does not mean blaming yourself. It means reclaiming power. It means acknowledging that while you may not control events, you influence outcomes through how you respond. Asterisk, then there's the habit of living on autopilot. Asterisk, days blur together. You wake up. You do what you always do. You distract yourself. You sleep, repeat. There is no intention, no reflection, no deliberate direction. Asterisk, autopilot feels safe. It requires little effort, but it also prevents growth. Because growth requires awareness. It requires noticing patterns, questioning routines, making conscious choices. Asterisk, when life is lived on autopilot, years can pass without meaningful change. And one day, awareness returns, often triggered by regret or loss. That moment can be painful, but it can also be powerful if used wisely. Another silent habit is emotional suppression. You push feelings down. You distract yourself. You stay busy. You tell yourself it's fine. But emotions don't disappear when ignored. They accumulate. They leak out in other ways: irritability, fatigue, anxiety, numbness. Emotional avoidance feels like strength, but it weakens you over time. Because emotions carry information. They point to unmet needs, unresolved issues, misaligned values. Ignoring them is like ignoring warning lights on a dashboard. Then there's the habit of waiting for confidence before acting. Confidence is often treated as a prerequisite, but confidence is not the cause of action. It is the result of action. Waiting to feel ready keeps people stuck indefinitely, because readiness is built through experience, not thought. This habit convinces people that they are missing something internally, when what they're missing is exposure, practice, movement. Another habit is undervaluing consistency. People chase intensity, big changes, dramatic transformations, but life is shaped by small, repeated actions. Consistency feels boring, unimpressive, yet it compounds quietly. When consistency is ignored, effort becomes sporadic, progress becomes unpredictable, and frustration increases, not because progress is impossible, but because it is interrupted. Then there's the habit of not setting boundaries. Saying yes when you mean no, allowing interruptions, accepting disrespect. Boundaries protect energy. Without them, burnout becomes likely, resentment builds, and self-respect erodes. Another invisible habit is negative self-talk disguised as realism. Living in the past creates regret. Living in the future creates anxiety. Life only happens now. When presence is lost, fulfillment becomes unreachable, no matter how much is achieved. If you've listened this far, it means something inside you recognizes these patterns. That recognition itself is important, because most people never slow down long enough to notice the forces shaping their lives. They stay busy, distracted, moving, but not progressing. Awareness is rare, and awareness is the beginning of change. Now let's go deeper. Because some habits are not just invisible, they are emotionally protected. Your mind defends them, rationalizes them, justifies them, and that makes them harder to let go. One such habit is mistaking comfort for safety. Comfort feels safe. Familiar routines, predictable days, known struggles, even dissatisfaction can feel safer than uncertainty. The mind would rather stay in a familiar pain than risk an unfamiliar possibility. This is why people stay in jobs they dislike, relationships that drain them, and lifestyles that limit them. Comfort becomes dangerous when it replaces growth. When comfort becomes the goal, life slowly shrinks. You stop taking risks. You stop challenging assumptions. You stop exposing yourself to failure. And with that, you stop exposing yourself to growth. What makes this habit invisible is that it feels responsible, practical, mature. But deep down, it is driven by fear. Fear of discomfort. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of not being good enough. Another habit that quietly drains life is emotional outsourcing. This happens when your emotional state depends on external validation, praise, attention, approval, messages, likes, responses. When your mood rises and falls based on how others respond to you, your emotional stability becomes fragile. You may not notice this habit until silence triggers anxiety, until a lack of response feels like rejection, until being unnoticed feels unbearable. Emotional outsourcing gives other people control over your inner world. True emotional strength is not emotional suppression. It is emotional self-sufficiency, the ability to feel grounded even when validation is absent. This takes practice. It takes awareness. And it begins by noticing how often you look outward to feel okay inward. Another invisible habit is confusing busyness with importance. Being busy feels meaningful. It creates the illusion that you matter, that you are needed, that your time is valuable. But busyness without direction is just motion, not progress. Asterisk many people stay busy to avoid facing deeper questions. Am I fulfilled? Am I aligned? Am I living intentionally? When every moment is filled, there is no space for reflection. And without reflection, misalignment goes unnoticed. Asterisk this habit is socially rewarded, which makes it harder to question. But a full schedule does not equal a full life. Asterisk another deeply embedded habit is thinking in extremes. Asterisk all or nothing, success or failure, perfect or pointless. This mindset creates paralysis, because if something cannot be done perfectly, it feels not worth doing at all. Asterisk extremes create emotional swings. Motivation spikes, then crashes. Discipline starts strong, then disappears. Progress becomes inconsistent. Asterisk life is built in the middle, in small wins, in imperfect effort, in showing up even when conditions aren't ideal. Letting go of extremes allows consistency to take root. Asterisk another invisible habit is avoiding difficult conversations. Asterisk silence feels peaceful in the moment, but unresolved issues don't disappear. They accumulate. They create distance, resentment, misunderstanding. Asterisk avoidance protects short-term comfort, but damages long-term connection, whether with others or with yourself. Difficult conversations are uncomfortable, but they clarify reality. And clarity is kinder than quiet resentment. Asterisk another habit that slowly erodes life is over-identifying with past mistakes. Asterisk you are not your worst decision. You are not your lowest moment. But when the mind clings to the past, identity becomes rigid. Growth feels undeserved. Confidence feels dishonest. Asterisk learning from the past is healthy. Living inside it is limiting. Forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, is not weakness. It is a decision to move forward without dragging old weight into new moments. Asterisk another silent habit is neglecting physical awareness. Asterisk ignoring sleep, ignoring movement, ignoring nutrition. The body and mind are not separate systems. Physical neglect affects mood, focus, patience, and resilience. Asterisk many emotional struggles are intensified by physical depletion. A tired mind becomes negative. An underrested body becomes reactive. Caring for the body is not vanity. It is maintenance for clarity. Asterisk another habit is chasing intensity instead of sustainability. Asterisk short bursts of motivation feel powerful, but they fade. Sustainable habits feel boring, but they last. Life changes through what you can repeat, not what excites you briefly. Asterisk this habit keeps people restarting instead of continuing. Starting over feels hopeful. Continuing feels demanding. But continuity is where transformation happens. Asterisk another invisible habit is not finishing what you start. Asterisk beginnings are exciting. Endings require endurance. Each unfinished task sends a message to the subconscious. I don't follow through. Over time, confidence erodes. Trust weakens. Asterisk finishing, even imperfectly, builds internal credibility. Completion matters more than perfection. Asterisk another habit that quietly limits life is avoiding solitude. Asterisk solitude reveals thoughts you've been avoiding, feelings you've been suppressing, truths you've been postponing. Many people fear being alone not because they dislike solitude, but because they dislike what surfaces in it. Asterisk yet solitude is where alignment returns, where clarity emerges, where values become audible again. Asterisk another habit is outsourcing meaning. Asterisk waiting for achievements, titles, money, or recognition to give life meaning. Meaning does not arrive externally. It is created internally through engagement, contribution, and alignment. Asterisk when meaning is postponed, life feels empty even when successful. Asterisk another invisible habit is living reactively instead of intentionally. Asterisk reacting to messages, reacting to news, reacting to demands. Days become responses instead of choices. Intentional living requires pausing before acting, choosing before reacting. Asterisk without intention, life feels rushed and directionless. Asterisk another habit is minimizing your own needs. Asterisk telling yourself others have it worse, that you shouldn't complain, that your feelings aren't important. This habit disconnects you from yourself. Asterisk acknowledging needs does not make you selfish. Ignoring them makes you resentful. Asterisk another habit is mistaking distraction for rest. Asterisk scrolling is not rest. Binge watching is not recovery. True rest restores attention. Distraction numbs it. Asterisk rest requires presence, stillness, unstructured time. Without real rest, burnout becomes chronic. Asterisk another habit is waiting for certainty. Asterisk certainty rarely arrives. Most meaningful decisions involve uncertainty. Waiting for certainty keeps life on pause. Asterisk courage is acting without guarantees. Asterisk another invisible habit is treating time as infinite. Asterisk postponing dreams, delaying conversations, assuming there will always be later. Time feels abundant until it doesn't. Awareness of time creates urgency, not panic, clarity. Asterisk another habit is confusing motion with direction. Asterisk you can move fast in the wrong direction. Speed doesn't compensate for misalignment. Direction matters more than pace. Asterisk another habit is underestimating small actions. Asterisk small habits feel insignificant, but they compound. Identity is shaped by what you do repeatedly, not occasionally. Asterisk another habit is avoiding asking for help. Asterisk pride disguises itself as independence, but growth often requires guidance. Support is not weakness. Isolation slows progress. Asterisk another habit is neglecting reflection. Asterisk without reflection, experience doesn't turn into wisdom. Reflection turns mistakes into lessons and effort into insight. Asterisk another habit is defining yourself by productivity alone. Asterisk worth is not measured by output. Rest is not laziness. Being human is not a performance. Asterisk another habit is expecting permanent happiness. Asterisk life includes discomfort. Expecting constant happiness creates disappointment. Meaning is deeper than mood. Asterisk another habit is ignoring intuition. Asterisk intuition is subtle, quiet, easy to dismiss, but it often signals misalignment before logic catches up. Asterisk another habit is over-planning without execution. Asterisk planning feels safe. Execution feels risky. Balance is required. Asterisk another habit is not celebrating progress. Asterisk ignoring growth makes effort feel pointless. Recognition reinforces consistency. Asterisk